I caught a tremendous fish and held him beside the boat, half out of water, with my hook fast in a corner of his mouth. He didn't fight. He hadn't fought at all. He hung a grunting weight, battered and vulnerable and homely. Here and there his brown skin hung in strips like ancient wallpaper, and its pattern of darker brown was like wallpaper. Shapes like full-blown roses, stained and lost through age. He was speckled with barnacles, fine rosettes of lime, and infested with tiny white sea lice, and underneath 2 or 3 rags of greenweed hung down. While his gills were breathing in the terrible oxygen, the frightening gills, fresh and crisp blood that cut so badly, I thought of the coarse white flesh packed in like feathers, the big bones and little bones, the dramatic reds and blacks of his shining entrails, and the pink swim bladder like a big peony. I looked into his eyes, which were far larger than mine, but shallower and yellowed, the irises blackened and packed with tarnished tinfoil seen through the lenses of old scratched isinglass. They shifted a little, but not to return my stare. It was more like the tipping of an object toward the light. I admired his sullen face, the mechanism of his jaw, and then I saw that from his lower lip, if you could call it a lip, grim, wet, and weapon-like, hung 5 old pieces of fish line, or 4, and a wire leader with the swivel still attached, with all their 5 big hooks grown firmly in his mouth. A green line frayed at the end, where he broke it, 2 heavier lines, and a fine black thread still crimped from the strain and snap when he broke and got away. Like metals with their ribbons, frayed and wavering, a 5-haired beard of wisdom trailing from his aching jaw. I stared, and victory filled up the little rented boat, from the pool of bilge where oil had spread like a rainbow around the rusted engine, to the bailer rusted orange, the sun-cracked thwarts, the oarlocks on their strings, the gunwales, until everything was rainbow, 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 and I let the fish go.
Hey guys, so the title of this poem is pretty straightforward, and you can expect to hear about a fish. So, in the first few lines of this poem, the speaker and the fish are introduced, and the speaker seems to be in awe of the fish. And maybe the fish doesn't fight back because he's tired or he is scared. In these next few lines, the speaker mentions a few negative things about the fish, like that he is battered, but he also mentions the word homely, which means that even though the fish is old and beat up, there's still a strange charm to him. And like ancient wallpaper is a simile and it emphasizes the age of the fish. In these next few lines, there is roses, and that is flower imagery, which is a positive thing, and it is also an image that is not highly associated with fish. And you can see another positive image in fine rosettes of lime, and both of these are contrasted by this last line that says rags of green weed. In these next few lines are the most violent lines in all of the poem, and they talk about the gills. And so the gills are breathing in terrible oxygen, which could suggest that life is painful, or maybe it's just saying that the fish is drowning because it is out of the water. In these next few lines, he compares the fish's meat to feathers, which again is not an image that is associated with fish. And he also has another flower imagery with the peony that is being compared to the fish's swim bladder. And so at this point, the narrator is probably imagining all the things inside of the fish because he has done this before, and he is thinking about all the other fish that he has caught before and that he has probably gutted in the past. So now the narrator is looking into the fish's eyes, and eyes are important because, as they say, they're the windows to the soul. And so the eyes are larger, but they are shallower and yellower. And this could mean that the fish has been through a lot and seen a lot, and that this may have worn him out and he could be defeated by it. And at the end of this few lines, when he says that the ice shifted but not to return to stare, it could be that the fish is shocked, tired, or resigned to his fate. Later, it mentions that the fish's eyes movement was not a conscious movement, but it was more of that of an object. And this could mean that the fish is barely alive and not very responsive. And then he says, I admired his sullen face. So the fisherman is still in awe of the fish, despite the fact that the fish is dying and he's very old. Um, in this next few lines, the narrator moves from looking at the fish's eyes to looking at his mouth and his jaw, and he notices that the fish has a lot of hooks and fishing lines, and which means that the fish has very nearly been fished out of the water before by multiple fishermen, and none of them have succeeded, obviously, which means that the fish is a fighter. And the use of the word weapon like adds on to this image of the fish fighting against dangers in the past. And the fact that there were five big hooks and five pieces of fishing line means that this is something that the fish has repeatedly dealt with in the past, which again adds on to the image of this fighter fish. The narrator then goes on to describe some of the fishing lines, and there's three types of them, which add on to the fact that the fish has fought all these different types of threats. And later it says like medals with the ribbons, which means that the fish really has accomplished a lot. And then at the end it says his aching jaw. So it comes back to the fish being vulnerable and him being weak and old, as opposed to what he used to be in the past, a fighter. The narrator then is looking around at the fish, I mean, at the boat, and he mentions a rusted engine. And so that's imagery, and he is now kind of comparing the boat to the fish because they are both old and kind of beat up. This continues on into the next few lines, um, as she looks at different parts of the boat, and some of them are sun cracked or rusted. And so the boat is very much like the fish, which could mean that the author or the narrator is really identifying with the fish, as both of their lives have been beat up. And she the narrator probably does not have a lot of money because she mentioned that she is renting this ship, and if the ship really is this old and rusted, then she it's because she cannot afford something better, which would make sense if she really is sympathizing with the fish, as they are both probably um, living their last days or through hardships. And so the narrator then sympathizes with the fish and she lets it go. Okay, so for Soapstone, this speaker is a fisherman. It is not um, mentioned whether this is a woman or a man, but it could very likely be the author herself. And the occasion is not specific. If it is the author, then it should be within her lifetime. And the audience is a general audience, or it could be people going through hardships, and or older people who are not longer in their productive youthful age. And the purpose is to convince people to stop and think about life and about how much they have lived, and to reflect on how how far they've come and how much they have accomplished over the years. The subject is a fish getting caught on a fishing trip and then being released. and the tone is admiring, inquisitive, and sympathetic.